I never forget the tears in the eyes of my husband when we were going on the plane. And of course, I never thought that that's the end. I wanted always to be positive.
This woman has known both glory and loss. Behind her lie triumph and downfall, dazzling royal receptions, and the silent grief of losing those dearest to her husband, her children, her homeland. For 2 decades, she wore the crown of Iran, surrounded by the opulence of the East and the shimmer of jewels. Her image graced the covers of fashion magazines, her elegance admired from Paris to New York. But in 1979, everything changed. The Iranian Revolution shattered the world of Farah Pahlavi, wife of the Shah, mother of the crown prince. Faced with mortal danger, she was forced to flee her homeland in haste, carrying with her only memories and the ache of exile. Decades have passed since then. Where is she? How has she changed over these 46 years? And what legacy has she left in the pages of history? Stay with us and subscribe to our channel to find out more.
Tehran, late 1960s. The evening sun casts a golden glow over the ivory-white colonnades of the Niavaran Palace. In a hall where marble floors gleam under crystal chandeliers, she appears, Farah, poised, reserved, dressed in a hand-embroidered evening gown. She is the queen, and that says it all. The story of Farah Pahlavi is the story of a woman who stood at the heart of an era's collapse, a woman who went from being an architecture student to a queen, and later to an exiled figure who lost everything except her inner strength. Farah Diba's early years were spent in the cool shade of northern Tehran's gardens. She was the only child in the family. Though Farah did not belong to a royal bloodline, her ancestry was highly respectable. Her paternal grandfather, Abdul Hossein Diba, was a diplomat and served as Iran's ambassador to Russia in the late 19th century. He was among the first Iranians to study in Europe. Her father, Sohrab Diba, was an officer in the Iranian army. Farah's mother, Farideh, though not of aristocratic origin, was an educated woman who spoke several languages and was deeply devoted to raising her daughter with strong values. Farah grew up in an environment where education and culture were held in high regard. When Farah was just 9 years old, her father passed away, a great tragedy for the family. Facing financial hardship, they had to leave their spacious home in Tehran and move into a small apartment. It was a difficult time, but Farah's mother did everything in her power to ensure her daughter received a quality education and had a promising future. Farah attended several schools in Tehran, including the prestigious Jeanne d'Arc School. In 1957, at the age of 18, she left for Paris to continue her studies. There, she enrolled at the Lycée Razi and later was admitted to the École Spéciale d'Architecture, where she began studying architecture. She would stay up at night working on drawings, sipping coffee from white porcelain cups, like a true Parisienne. She wore berets, but beneath that image preserved her Eastern traits: modesty, dignity, and quiet strength. In Paris, she lived in an atmosphere of cultural and intellectual prosperity. At the time, many young Iranians, including women, had the opportunity to study abroad, thanks to government scholarships. This allowed Farah to receive a European education. She was an excellent student and also passionate about sports, captain of her school and university basketball teams. At the time, she had no idea a life-changing encounter awaited her. 1959. The Iranian embassy in Paris was a lively yet heavily guarded place. That day, the Shah came to meet students studying abroad on government grants. Among them stood a tall girl in a gray coat. Farah wasn't the flashiest or most stunning woman in the room, but when she spoke, he noticed. She was remarkably intelligent, articulate, and educated. Her clarity, intellect, and gracious humility captivated him. Farah was just 21 years old. The Shah was 40. By the time of their meeting, the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was a tired man. Behind him were 2 failed marriages and the heavy burden of the throne. Before him stood a young woman, in whom he suddenly saw not only a future wife, but also an ally. Her eyes did not beg. They looked at him with curiosity and confidence. Farah was the perfect fit, educated, dignified, and far from palace intrigues.
And he speaks to me very simply and spoke to me about what I do, anything. And he said, I have been married twice, and would you like to marry him? Of course, with pleasure.
And so it
I
was.
said yes.
A few months later, in November of the same year, they became engaged. Their wedding took place in December 1959 and was widely covered by global media. Farah wore a gown by Yves Saint Laurent, and the tiara she wore, with 325 diamonds weighing over 2 kilograms, was made by Harry Winston. The Shah's ceremonial uniform completed the image, a symbol of a new chapter in Iran's history. This marriage was not just the union of 2 individuals. It was a political event, as the Shah of Iran was looking for a woman who could bear him heirs. In 1960, Farah gave birth to their firstborn, a long-awaited heir, Prince Reza Pahlavi. This was a significant event not only for the Shah's family, but for all of Iran. The country finally had its long-awaited heir to the throne. The birth of their son solidified Farah's position not only as the Shah's wife, but as the future Empress. In 1967, the Shah officially crowned her, making Farah the first woman in Iran's history to receive the title of Shah Banu, Empress. Furthermore, he declared her regent in the event of his death before the heir reached 21, an unprecedented move for a Muslim monarchy. In 1963, Farah gave birth to their daughter, Princess Farah Naz. Then, in 1966, their second son, Prince Ali Reza, was born, and in 1970, the family grew by another daughter, Princess Layla. But Farah didn't limit herself to the roles of mother and wife. She actively engaged in social and cultural projects, overseeing dozens of foundations in the fields of education, medicine, and the arts. She championed women's education, advocated for women's rights, and worked to improve their status. On her initiative, the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art was established, and its collection remains one of the most significant outside the West, featuring works by artists such as Picasso, Van Gogh, Pollock, and Andy Warhol. Farah was not a mere decorative figure at court. She traveled across the country, visiting villages, talking to women, and showing a genuine interest in their lives. The Western press often referred to her as the Eastern Jacqueline Kennedy due to her style, elegance, and influence on public life. Farah embodied a unique blend of European fashion, elegance, and Eastern dignity. Her style was not just about following trends. It was a diplomatic language that allowed her to represent Iran on the global stage. She wore Dior, Givenchy, and Yves Saint Laurent, but always with a sense of balance, national pride, and respect for the traditions of her country. She didn't just follow fashion, she shaped the image of the modern Eastern woman, educated, strong, and stylish. In this, she truly resembled Jacqueline Kennedy, not as a copy, but as a comparable symbol of influence. Light blue dresses, bouffant hairstyles, soft lipstick, and neat makeup. Farah was the epitome of style and understated elegance. Her photographs appeared in Paris Match, Vogue, and Life. However, the rapid development of Iran was accompanied by growing social inequality and tension. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution took place. The Shah and his family were forced to leave the country. In February, Tehran was filled with the smoke of burning tires, the roar of protests, and the sounds of gunfire. When the plane left Iranian soil, Farah had no idea she was leaving for the last time.
You know, I never forget the tears in the eyes of my husband when we were going on the plane. And of course, I never thought that that's the end. You know, I wanted always to be positive.
Behind the window, dusty plains, golden minarets, and her country, which she would never see again. There were no tears in her eyes, only coldness and a frozen heart. She left not as a queen, but as an exile. Thus began the years of wandering for her and her family: Egypt, Morocco, the Bahamas, Mexico, the United States. In 1980, the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, passed away in Cairo after a prolonged battle with cancer of the lymphatic system, malignant lymphoma. He was 60 years old. Farah became a widow at 41. His illness had started in the mid-1970s, but was initially kept secret from the public and many members of the government. His treatment was complicated by their flight from the country and constant relocation. After the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the overthrow of the monarchy, and their forced exile from Iran, the Shah, along with his family, spent many months in exile, moving from one country to another, from Egypt to Morocco, the Bahamas, Mexico, the US and Panama. Many nations refused to grant him asylum due to pressure from the new Islamic regime in Iran. By the time Egyptian President Anwar Sadat offered him asylum in Egypt, the Shah's health had sharply deteriorated. He was treated by the best Western doctors, but his disease was in its advanced stages. In July 1980, in a military hospital in Cairo, the Shah passed away. His body was buried with state honors in the Al-Rifai Mosque in Cairo, where other Egyptian monarchs are also buried. For Farah Pahlavi, this loss was a deeply personal tragedy. She was only 41 years old. She lost not only her husband, with whom she had spent over 20 years, but also a partner with whom she shared power, diplomatic journeys, and the vision of modernizing Iran. She was left a widow in a foreign country, in exile, stripped of her homeland, the throne, and the future they had built together. Later, in her memoir, An Enduring Love, My Life with the Shah, Farah Pahlavi described the final months of her husband's life as extremely difficult. He suffered physically, but even more so, emotionally. A strong, proud man, he could not come to terms with the fact that he had lost everything for which he had lived. She wrote about sleepless nights, constant anxiety, thoughts about the fate of their children, and the separation from their homeland, which she could no longer visit. Since then, Cairo has become a place of remembrance for Farah. Every year, she visits Egypt to lay flowers on her husband's grave. Although her life continued in the United States and France, a part of her heart remained in that Cairo mosque, where the last Shah of Iran rests. After the Shah's death, Farah was left a widow with 4 children: Reza, Farhanaz, Ali Reza, and Layla. She focused all her energy on giving her children stability and a sense of belonging despite the constant relocations and political instability. They lived in Egypt, then in France, and eventually settled in the United States. Farah not only ensured that her children received an education, but also tried to preserve for them the Iranian identity, language, culture, and the memory of their father, and the time when their family embodied Iran. Her eldest son, Reza Pahlavi, had been groomed from an early age for the role of the future monarch. After the fall of the monarchy, he continued his studies in the United States and became an active political figure in exile. Farah always supported him both publicly and personally, emphasizing in interviews that she believed in his mission and hoped for a democratic future for Iran. Farah believed the worst was behind her, but life had more challenges in store for this strong woman. In 2001, her youngest daughter, Layla, who had been struggling with depression and anorexia, died at the age of 31 from a sleeping pill overdose in a London hotel. This was a devastating blow for Farah, coming so soon after her husband's death. 10 years later, in 2011, her youngest son, Ali Reza, took his own life in Boston. He had long suffered from depression, the loss of his sister, and the feeling of disconnection from his homeland. For Farah, this was the second irreplaceable loss. "Mothers should not have to bury their children," she said in an interview, not hiding her pain. After the loss of her younger children, Farah moved closer to her eldest son, Reza, in Maryland, to be near him and his family. She maintains warm relationships with her 3 granddaughters, Reza's daughters, and his wife Yasmin. Despite over 40 years of exile, Farah Pahlavi maintains a deep emotional and spiritual connection to Iran. Although she has not returned to her homeland since 1979, her interest in the fate of the country and the suffering of its people remains unchanged. Since the revolution, Farah has become a persona non grata in the Islamic Republic. Returning is unsafe for her, especially given the regime's repressive policies toward former members of the royal family. However, she has always emphasized that her heart remains in Iran. Farah actively follows news and events inside the country, expressing her views on protests, violations of women's rights, executions, and repression. For example, during the mass protests of 2022, she made several statements in support of the Iranian people, particularly women. She has repeatedly emphasized the importance of equality, education, and freedom for women in Iran. In her rare interviews and on social media, she says, "I cannot remain indifferent to the suffering of Iranian women, mothers, and girls. Their resilience inspires me." On national tragedies or the anniversaries of significant events, Farah issues messages expressing solidarity with the Iranian people, condemning injustice, and calling for hope. She keeps archives, art collections, photographs, and documents related to pre-revolutionary Iran. Her commitment to preserving the country's cultural heritage is seen as a form of resistance against oblivion and the sterilization of historical memory. "I dream of living to the day when I can once again walk the streets of Tehran, embrace Iranian women, and see Iran free from fear." Today, Farah Pahlavi lives a quiet, secluded life, maintaining the dignity of a former empress. Despite her age, she is now 85. She remains active, keeping up with global events, especially those in Iran, participating in cultural activities, and engaging in charitable work. Occasionally, she grants interviews to Western media or publishes messages to the Iranian people, especially during times of national unrest or mourning. Every year, Farah visits Cairo, where her husband, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, is buried. These trips are deeply personal, filled with memories and respect. Farah will forever be remembered by people as a woman who embodied not power, but memory, not a title, but service. Both in exile, in fame, and in shadow, she remained true to herself. Not as a queen, but above all, as a dignified woman.